In this video, I'm going to talk about how to use Mbti and Enneagram personality typologies to create a proper character. Because characters are quite tricky because you can't be too realistic about characters because actual people are very layered, and it could seem contradictory in a kind of a narration, especially a fiction that requires the writer to make believable characters in the sense that they're noticeable amongst the other characters. Like, for example, Ron, Hermione, and Harry are very distinct characters that was purposeful from J.K. Rowling, and that she created Harry to be the sort of the quiet but sturdy character, and Ron is the humor, and Hermione is the knowledge. It's on purpose. So they're very distinct. In reality, people are not as obviously distinct from one another. So that's why typologies like Mbti and Enneagram could be very useful in making characters, because as we all know, MBTI and Enneagram are considered pseudoscience, so it's not really useful in day-to-day life, like actual interactions with people. You can't really use it that much. So even though a lot of people do believe in it, have faith in it, it's sort of like a sciencey astrology. It's very different from the Big Five. Even though I'm an MBTI enthusiast, I know all the theories, and then I'm also an Enneagram enthusiast, but I know exactly that the theory itself is it has a lot of limitations, because when you're sort of for example, I could identify as both an INFP and an INTP, but I'm very cerebral, but I'm also very artsy, because artsy stuff is the INFP, and then the cerebral part is the INTP. In the Enneagram system, I could be a 4 Enneagram because I'm melancholic and artistic, but I could also be a 5 Enneagram because I'm very cerebral. I like to read a lot of things, like a lot of science stuff and whatnot. And that's how limited the system. It's very limited, but in terms of making characterization, making fictional characters, it's so useful actually, because the limitation of the system for actual human beings are perfect for fictional characters. So for example, one of the characters that I've made in my novel, I self-published a novel called Forget Me Not in Bahasa Indonesia, and I made him an ISTP because he likes sports, and then I also made him to be a 5 Enneagram because he's quite introverted, and I made it very ISTP of him. He's like sports, and he's a very sporty guy, but then he got into, so he's an ISTP 5 wing 4, so he's kind of heady, but he has an artistic sort of talent in writing fiction, and his love interest would be an INFP 4 because she's obsessed with literature and the classics, all that jazz. So how do you kind of use these typologies like MBTI and Enneagram in a narration, like a fiction narration, either a novel or a short story? The way is of course, the caricature from each MBTI type, either an INTP girl, I think Hermione Granger from Harry Potter series is an INTP girl, or an INTJ girl, so she's like a stereotypical caricature of that type. It's very useful. You can make like a caricature like that, maybe like Hermione Granger, an INTJ girl, and then she's also very driven to follow the rules. So she's a 6 Enneagram. So you can make her emotional narration dialogue too. You could kind of sprinkle a lot of the obvious stereotypical things that an INTJ and a 6 Enneagram would say. And then you could also make the inner dialogue of the character a reflection of the process and the progress of individuation, or from a 6 Enneagram. There's like, in the Enneagram system, you could kind of change to the betterment of who you are or the worst of who you are. And there's a wing, kind of like a flavor of each Enneagram. Like, I'm such an enthusiast, right? But I don't believe any of it. I just pretend that Hermione Granger is the inspiration for this character we're going to make together now. So she's like, this character is an INTJ 6 Enneagram, INTJ MBTI, and then we could kind of make her inner dialogue introverted intuition her dominant function in INTJ. So she's very abstracting, very visionary. Oh, she's thinking about the future always, and then she doesn't like to be bothered because her vision could be easily startled, and it's kind of like a dream-like sequence. And then and we connect it to how she's very effective driven, so it's her extrovert thinking. So she's very visionary and dreamlike, but then outwardly she's like just doing stuff and making things work and whatnot. So, and then the 6 Enneagram is like very driven to follow the rules, so she's like following the rules and then counterintuitively kind of mocking the system. And so I really recommend you to really understand the system of MBTI and Enneagram, not to use it for your daily life, no. But if you're a writer, like especially if you're a fiction writer, it's so useful to have this type of like pseudoscience typologies, including like for humors and astrology. All those, astrology is not pseudoscience, but you get the point, right? It's physiognomy, all those stuff. It's very useful to create a convincing character, a believable character. Because the point is not to make it realistic. The character shouldn't be realistic, because realistic people are very layered. Intentions are so difficult and complex. You can't make it into a fiction novel. That's not the point. We devour fiction because it's so simple and simplistic and not realistic. Realistic life, people are very complex, and like in terms of MBTI and Enneagram, the typologies are sort of complicated enough, but very limiting. And especially if you kind of like sprinkle in physiognomy from China, like physical features could represent like the characterization, like the personalities of a person is obvious from their physical features. That's physiognomy from China. And then of course astrology, that's very easy, everyone knows astrology. And for humors, like melancholy, phlegmatic, choleric, sanguine, that's also a very useful kind of like pseudoscientific typology. So yeah, that's kind of my encouragement for you to learn about the Enneagram and MBTI, like really the nitty-gritty of the theories. It's not that hard, really, it's not. And because it's so easy, if you're a writer, of course, if you're a fiction writer or if you're an aspiring fiction writer, like this like typology systems will really help you to make really kind of crisp, believable character that is simple but complex enough to kind of make you wonder. So that's all for me. Like, subscribe, comment below, and share this video to someone who you think is an aspiring writer. And see you later.